and welcome to the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel. My name is Alice and today I have the April 2024 Paletteful Premier Pack here in front of me. So let's go ahead, open it up and see what's inside. Pretty. Oh, I see some markers. Oh, first we got to start with the cute little sticker. It's a cute girl doodling in the sunlight with some markers, and the marker box says Paletteful. I love that. So this is an alcohol markers themed box. So the first thing we have in here is this Copic Ciao marker set. This is the portrait set. So it has a variety of different like portrait tones. And these are double-ended. One is a chiseled nib and the other is more of a brush nib. They are alcohol markers. Copics are very, very well known. These are refillable, so once the ink runs out, you can buy ink refills for them. And these are just kind of like top of the line markers, so you're going to get 6 of those in the portrait colors. So we have a set of 3 microns. It's the fine and bold line set. So we have a size 08, a size 10, and a size 12. So we get some kind of larger sizes in this set. So micron pens are archival ink. They work great with alcohol markers, so they won't smudge or anything like that when we use the alcohol markers with them. So these are perfect. They are archival, like I said. They're permanent, fade resistant, chemically stable. It won't bleed or run. They're really, really great pens. Next, we have a graphics sketch marker. This one is going to be primary cyan, and it looks like it's a 3 assorted alcohol marker selection. So your selection may be a little bit different than mine, but I got the graphic sketch marker, of which one side is a chisel nib and the other side is a bullet nib. I also got 2 Tombow alcohol markers. I got a blue and a gray. The Tombow ones are chisel nib on one side and brush nib on the other side. So these should all blend really nicely together. We've got some nice blues, a gray for some nice tonality, and then those portrait colors. Finally, in here, we have this multimedia mineral paper. So mineral paper is similar to wood-based paper, but it's made with calcium carbonate from rocks instead of tree pulp. So it's considered to be like an environmentally friendly alternative. And you can do all kinds of stuff on this. I've never used alcohol markers on it, but I am really excited to try. I do really tend to enjoy working on stone paper. It has a really nice, very smooth finish that I enjoy working with, and the paper itself tends to be very, very tough and sturdy. Okay, so this is everything that we got this month in the April 2024 Paletteful Premier Pack. We got the multimedia mineral paper by Yasutomo. We got the cute sticker. We have 3 assorted alcohol marker pens. I got the Tombow and the graphics pen. We have the Copic Ciao marker set, and then we have the micron liner set. So let's go ahead and make some swatches, play around with how these blend and how these work on the mineral paper, and then make some artwork. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do was some swatches because this is mineral paper, not regular marker paper. So I knew things were going to work a little bit differently on this paper. It's really, really smooth paper, and because it's made out of stone, it's not quite as absorbent. So the paint or the ink kind of sits on top for a little bit longer before it sinks in and dries. And you can also reactivate it really, really easily. So it's almost like painting with watercolor, but like markers. So it's really interesting, and you can get some really pretty techniques. Like you can use some really pretty techniques to get some interesting effects. So I'm just kind of playing around with some blending here, kind of cleaning off my gray from the blue that got on it when I was blending, and also swatching the colors so I can see what I thought was a dark blue from the Tombows is actually more of a purple color, as you can see. I don't know why I thought it was a blue, but it really looked blue to me until I put it down on the paper, and then it looked a little bit more purple. So it's kind of a purple blue. And then I swatched all of the portrait colors kind of one into another, kind of blending them a little bit as I went. And there were some that I had a little bit of a harder time blending, like these colors into each other, and then others that blended a little bit easily, just kind of depending on how close to the color that I was blending into it was already. But this was a really good test for me to see how everything was going to work, how I could layer, how long I needed to wait for things to dry to layer. So I really recommend playing around with like a little test page, especially since you're using like a very unique texture, unique surface. And then I kind of played around with some layering. I wanted to see how things would layer on top of the like purple blue so that I could see how I could use it for shading and potentially like glazing techniques. So I started by just kind of doing the skin tones, portrait tones on top of that. And as you can see, I was able to get some really pretty lavenders as it kind of like blurred out, which was really nice. And then I just swatched the microns, which were so nice to use on this paper because it is so smooth. So it was really fun to use. And then I just wanted to try a little bit more of kind of layering. So I added in a little bit of gray and kind of played around with picking up other colors on the tip of it and using that to create like ombre effects and just seeing how the gray would look like on top of the portrait tones as well. So once I'd done that, I played around with a couple things and decided that the best way to do this was to show you a bunch of different techniques. So I started by spraying the whole paper with isopropyl alcohol. I used 91%, I think it is. And then I put on some of the lightest portrait tones, and then I went in with that dark purple and I started adding in these floral shapes. I went ahead and used my finger to really smudge everything out. I was just kind of trying to create a background here. And as you can see, you can get some really cool watercolor effects. So I just kept spraying the whole page with this alcohol and then smudging it out with my fingers. And I put on some blue, really trying to create this kind of like textured, cool blue, purple background. I smudged it out with some paper towel and then sprayed it again. And then while it was still a little damp, I went in with this medium portrait tone to create a sort of greenish effect since it's kind of a little more yellow and the background is blue, and created these stems. And then I went over with the gray marker to create the same kind of like technique as I had used for these first purple ones. And we're just going to keep using the same techniques and kind of layering things over one another to create this sense of depth and to make everything in the background look kind of blurry. So I'm adding in all of these gray little like leaves, or if I don't know if these are a bunch of leaves or if they're like bluebell flowers. I don't really know. I missed a couple, but I'll get those. And then I'm going in with the blue, going back over that yellow to create kind of a green. And then I'm going to take the blue and do this kind of little doodle effect in the center to add a little bit of depth. I'm keeping this kind of abstract and loose, but it is obviously pulled from nature and representational to an extent. So it's kind of like an impressionistic style. And it's really fun to work in the style because you don't really have to worry about things looking perfect or exactly as they are in real life. You're just kind of trying to capture an idea, and you don't have to stress as much. So it's a really fun way to work. I'm using the tiny fine nib to do this little detail work, and then I'm spraying the whole thing with alcohol and kind of tapping it a little bit just to blur it. And you can just see it blurring out. It's so cool. I'm going back in with that medium toned marker to start establishing some leaf shapes in front of this. Again, using that to create kind of a greenish color, and just being really, really loose and using that brush nib, and then going back over with the tiny bullet nib of the blue to create kind of a greenish effect and to add in some shading and some more details. Again, keeping this really loose, really sketchy, because I'm going to be going back over this with some alcohol in a little bit. So once I've finished in all of these details, I'm going to pour a little bit of that alcohol into a container, and I'm just going to take a brush and I'm going to go over all of it with the brush. So you can see me doing that right now. And as you can see, it kind of pushes all of the ink out and it creates this really cool kind of bubbly blended effect. And the reason I'm doing this is because A, it's going to kind of push these into the background, and B, it creates this really cool textured edge that's like perfect for leaves. So I do that, kind of spritz it with a little bit more of alcohol because again, I'm trying to make everything layered so that it's like blurry and blurry and blurry and blurry and slowly comes into focus. And then I'm going over with the blue, doing those same shapes as before, exact same thing, just pressing the tip of the brush into the page to create these little flicks and building up these little floral or leaf shapes, however you want to see them. and it's just easier to kind of flip the page as you go so that you're working in the direction that you need to, and just kind of do all of one direction and then do all of the other direction. And this is kind of where I felt like it was starting to come together a little bit more. I was a little nervous as I worked on this piece because there were so many new techniques and interesting things happening. I was worried it wouldn't come out, but I think it did. So I sprayed it with a lot more alcohol because I really wanted to get them blurry, and I feel like they really ended up blurring out so nicely. And once they blurred out, it was time to start with some more details because I felt like I had enough depth and blurriness going on. So I went in with the darkest brown and I started using that to draw out these kind of leaf shapes, again being really, really loose. And then I go in with some alcohol, and the reason that I'm doing this is to create those really textured edges so I can use those as a guide, because it creates these like really pretty edges that look very leaf-like. It's also going to kind of push away the alcohol underneath there so that they're a little bit lighter for me to work on as I'm building up color. Then I'm going to go in and using the fine point of the blue, I'm going to go around and start adding in some shading. I'm going to establish those lines. I'm going to start doing the outline on the edge of the leaf and just adding in cast shadows, adding in all of that shading. And I'm just kind of using simple strokes to try to establish this and blend everything out. And then I'm going to go in with this dark brown and add in additional shading and also the veining on the leaf, and just kind of start getting in more depth to these. And then I'll go in with that blue and just blend everything out with the light blue so that it kind of blends in a little bit more. And I'm just using little like flicking line strokes. So this part is definitely a little bit tedious, but you can kind of lift up your color with the lighter color. And I recommend just kind of blending right to the edges just a little bit, but not fully over the color, because it can kind of lift up your color because of the way the paper is. So just kind of experiment with blending till you figure out kind of the way that it works best. It's definitely a bit of a trial and error process, which is why I recommend doing that page at the beginning where you're just kind of experimenting and seeing what happens. And that way you can kind of figure out some of these techniques before you go and use them in an actual piece. But I was pretty happy with how this was coming out. I think it was adding some really, really nice contrast and really like making these leaves pop in front of the kind of more blurry background. I felt like I was finally starting to achieve a little bit of that effect that I was looking for. One of the things that I was really hoping for in this video was to show you a lot of different techniques. So showing you the watercolor techniques, blending techniques and things like that. So hopefully that was really, really helpful for you and gave you some inspiration as to some different ways to work with these pens. Because this paper is so interesting and versatile, you can do a lot with it. And it really can take a lot of ink. It's very tough. It's very sturdy. So you can really kind of go ham with it and just play and explore and see what happens. And it's just a good vibe. So it's really fun to be creative on this type of paper, especially with these markers. So I'm really excited to see what everybody comes up with this month. It'll be really fun to see and go through the hashtag and take a look at everything that y'all have done. So just finishing up these leaves here, the final leaves, adding in that dark brown and then going in and blending. And as we come to the end, I am going to go in and use that micron marker to add in some little doodles down at the bottom. And you'll see me do that here just shortly, but I just kind of wanted to add in a little bit more detail and interest down to that bottom area, because a lot of stuff was happening towards the top, but not as much was happening towards the bottom. So I wanted to balance out that composition a little bit by using those microns to add in a little bit of detail. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do right now, just drawing in these little stems and doodling up on them. So that is pretty much it. That is how I created my piece for this month's Paletteful pack. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it gave you some inspiration and some ideas on how to use these supplies. If you would like to get your own Paletteful packs box and join us, then definitely click the link in the description box below and you can subscribe to get an awesome box filled with art supplies like this every single month. Thank you as always so much for watching this video. I can't wait to see what you all made, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.